Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Prospect Central 101. My name is Chris, and today joining me we have
Keilan.
Sam.
Grayson.
and we're going to be talking to you guys a little bit about two different things. First off, we're going to be breaking down the Lions 2020 season, and then also we have Grayson with us today, who is a first-time joiner, streamer. I don't know what you want to call it. And he's going to help us break down Week 1 versus the Chicago Bears. So, welcome, Grayson. Hopefully, you have a great time learning and discussing things with us today. So, today, first
Thank you.
thing.
I'm very glad to be here.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. So, today we're going to start off a little bit just by going over the Lions 53-man roster, as well as maybe some practice squad guys if any of you guys want to talk about some of them. And of course, we all start with the quarterback position, and our favorite player, well, I guess I won't generalize here, in Matthew Stafford. So, I already did a little bit of a preview article on Stafford and this season for the Straight Lines podcast. For those of you guys who want to check that out, I'll pull that up here as well. And I guess we'll start with Grayson, since you're new here. What do you think about Matthew Stafford's chances to find success in 2020?
I think they're obviously pretty good. You know, he's been one of the top quarterbacks in the league since he was drafted. I don't know if I throw around MVP candidate just seeing the article right there flash. But you know what you're going to get with Stafford. Easy, 4,000 yards. You know, he'll put you in a position to win the game.
Cool, Keilan.
Well, basically what Grayson said. If he carries on what should have happened last year, if it wasn't for injury, he's definitely going to be an MVP candidate. But he's definitely a quarterback that can win you games, a top 10 guy. He elevates that entire offense.
And Sam?
Yeah, pretty much what everyone else has been saying. I mean, he's a great quarterback. He's not just going to put you in a position to win, but more than likely he's going to single-handedly win you a few games down the stretch. But yeah, I mean, kind of like Grayson said, you know what you're getting with him. You're going to get an absolute gunslinger who's going to put up yards, touchdowns, etc. Yeah, he's going to win you games. Great quarterback.
So one thing I kind of want to highlight from my article here is I took a look at some of Stafford's analytics and metrics from last season. Obviously, he only played 8 games, unfortunately. But he was really, really solid on those deep passes. So I was watching a PFF preview today, and they talked about how Matthew Stafford was basically a worse version of Jameis Winston. Sam,
I beg your pardon?
Sam, I'll let you start with that, your response.
Stafford is a worse version of Jameis Winston?
Yes.
That's a bold statement.
Basically, because of how aggressive he is, he takes those shots down the field a little bit too often, and it results in a lot of turnover-worthy plays.
I'm a pass on this. Someone else can handle it before I do.
Keilan?
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know if you can call him worse than Winston for that. At least Winston threw the turnovers. He had like the most interceptions in the season. How are you about to call Stafford worse than him? I don't know. It's the worst take that I've seen this entire offseason / training camp preseason type. It's the worst take I've seen in my life.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more in depth about this in a little while. But Grayson, how do you think Stafford compares to Mitch Trubisky? Is there anything that kind of separates them in terms of quarterback tiers to you?
The first thing you're going to see is no doubt the arm strength, that, Stafford has compared to Trubisky, who, I'm going to be higher on than you guys just naturally as a Bears fan. But, he leaves a lot to be wanted when it comes to throwing the ball, which happens to be a pretty important skill that I like my quarterbacks to have. In terms of throwers, there's not too many guys in the league better than Stafford. And then kind of going back to that Jameis Winston's a very good thrower, but he's not a very good quarterback, and Stafford's a very good thrower, and he's still a very good quarterback. So I think it's a tough comparison, that last one was, and then definitely compared to Trubisky. He may have those more risky plays, but Trubisky's inaccuracy compared to the gunslinger mentality that Sam was talking about earlier that Stafford has is, I think, the difference between those two turnover-worthy plays at least.
Nice. So, yeah, Stafford had a really nice year last year. We've already kind of gone over a little bit of it. Mentioned the same conversation as guys like Drew Brees, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson. Kind of in that top 5 group of guys when he was healthy last season. And one thing that was particularly interesting to me that I wanted to highlight in my article was this point here about how, despite throwing the ball a lot further down the field, his decision making didn't really seem like it hit that much of a drop off to me. Last year, moving from Cutter to Bev, and his time to throw actually went down. Well, it didn't go down. It didn't go longer as much as I thought it would, considering the dramatic increase in depth of target last year. So it's really interesting to kind of follow those types of things. And Sean Ryan, I am a huge fan of what Sean Ryan was able to bring. We are very lucky that the Panthers were able to lure Joe Brady out from LSU. We were able to keep Sean Ryan as our QB coach. He did a lot of good work last year. Even with David Blau. David Blau out of Purdue was not really the greatest quarterback, and he kept us in a couple games. He didn't win us any, but he kept us competitive in a couple of those games, specifically the Packers game in Week 17. So hopefully we get to see some more growth from him as well. So is there anything else that you guys want to talk about with Stafford? Any one of you guys?
Well, not really Stafford, but to further your point on Ryan, if the season doesn't go to plan and Patricia gets, canned and we don't completely change everything up, I would love nothing more than to promote Bevell to head coach and promote Ryan to offensive coordinator. I think that would be the best option if we had to fire Patricia.
Interesting. So kind of keep some things continuity there.
I mean, to me, if it's a really bad season, it's going to be because of the defense, and I guess that's where you got to, can Patricia and, see what you're doing about Unlin too. And
the one comment that I would have to that, though, is that if you're basically going to get rid of Patricia, you're probably also getting rid of Bob Quinn, which I really hope does not happen. I like both guys a lot. Yeah. But in that particular instance, it's so bad that something really, really dramatically bad happens, I do think that you're kind of just going to completely restart the entire org under Sheila.
Yeah,
you're basically getting a new head coach, a new GM, a new OC, a new DC, a new quarterback, most likely. You're literally just going to completely restart the entire organization from the top down.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I don't really like Bevell as a head coach, but even if we restarted, I don't think it's a horrible idea to keep him at offensive coordinator.
Yeah, but at that point, it's up to the GM who hires the new HC, who hires the new coordinators.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if we were to go after Eric Bieniemy and Darrell Bevell do not really have a whole lot in common in terms of scheme and system and language. So there'd be a huge disconnect there. I don't really want that and we saw that what happens in those instances with a little bit less dramatic, but we saw what happens with Jim Bob Cooter in week 1. Or not week 1, year 1 with Patricia. The disconnect there between MP and JBC really led to some issues with the offense in 2018. I don't really want to undergo that, especially if we have to go after a new quarterback that fits the new GM and head coach. Just
No.
completely get rid of the whole thing. Obviously, at that point, Bevell will have success elsewhere. If he proves that this offense is good, he might get a head coaching job somewhere else. He might take the Terrell Austin route and get another DC play calling job. In Bevell's case, OC. So there's going to be a ton of options open for people who contribute here after this regime ends, whenever that might be. Or on the other hand, Bevell could just impress and we could make the playoffs and we could let him go to be a head coach somewhere else. That'd be fun.
Right.
The new GM hires Patricia again, head coach.
Yeah.
Honestly, if he gets fired, I would not be surprised if the Pats hire him as DC. Again.
Probably not. Yeah, that's Pats or
Miami,
Giants
I guess
or...
it makes sense too. I don't know who their DC is behind Flores.
No, I feel like he'd get a head coaching job somewhere still.
Probably after
Possibly.
another DC stint. Somewhere
Atlanta
like...
would be interesting in that particular case because they have a Patriot GM in Dimitrov.
Yeah.
So yeah, we won't get too much into the coaching thing here. I'm trying to kind of stick to personnel, but that is a very interesting point.
Let's move on. We're gonna keep rambling.
Yeah, essentially. Okay, so next up we have the running back room, and of course we added Adrian Peterson a couple days ago. More of that vet mentor type, but we also have Kerryon Johnson returning and a draft pick addition in DeAndre Swift. So Sam, we'll start with you on this one. What do you think about the addition of Swift and Adrian Peterson to a group that already includes Kerryon?
I mean, literally, it could not have been a more perfect fit. You look at what Stafford and what Bevell likes, and it's to pass the ball out of the backfield, like, dump it off to your running backs, etc. And we had, like, Kerryon's fine catching the ball, but then you get someone like Swift, who's pretty much like a Kamara, who specializes in being a receiver, and you just added a whole new dimension to this offense. What I do want to, why does that depth chart say that Swift is running back 4?
Probably
Because he's a
hurt.
rookie.
Oh, that too.
Like, there's no way he's behind Ty Johnson.
Well, no.
So, okay, there's actually two reasons for that. First off, because he's a rookie. Second off, because he missed all the practice time. So the communications department basically didn't see him who makes the depth charts, obviously. So that depth chart is taken from the Lions official one. And the official one is basically done by the media department. And not the actual coaching staff. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, you'll see a couple inaccuracies like that too, specifically for rookies. Like I think they have Okuda at corner 3 or 4 too.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean Swift. I mean it kind of explains it in itself how good of a fit he is and how good of an addition it is. One, because of Kerryon's injuries, but two, you got to look at like a Mark Ingram Kamara style with the Saints. You're getting your lightning to your thunder and Kerryon. He's not like a pure thunderback, but he's got some power. And Bevell was also given the task of drafting anyone he wanted in the second round to make his offense complete and elite, and he immediately locked it in for DeAndre Swift, so he's going to use and abuse him any way he can.
Okay, Keilan next.
Well, I agree with what Sam said. Swift is like a perfect complement for Kerryon. It brings back the Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara pairing a few years ago in New Orleans. And for the Adrian Peterson signing, I feel like that one was kind of odd and interesting because I don't really see where he fits. He's probably behind Kerryon Johnson in playing the same role. So I don't see him getting too many snaps, but with the way the NFL is going with more running backs by committee, especially in like Patriots type schemes like we are, it'll be interesting to see how the snaps get distributed between the three main guys on our roster.
Cool. Grayson?
Yeah, so from the outside looking in, the running back room for me, for the Lions as an outsider, is actually one of my causes for concern. And I don't know if it's just because I'm a Bears fan, and with Montgomery taking over for Jordan Howard, we saw Howard have the success, and then we saw Montgomery come in and not find it. And early third rounder compared to an early second rounder, you can say that how you want, but with Keilan missing 14 games over the last 2 years, to come in and be reliant on a rookie like that, it is for me something to worry about. Obviously, you hope he comes in and does well. Early second rounder, you expect him to come in and do well. But it is, just from my experience just this past year, something to be skeptical of. But I do like Swift, and I did like Montgomery last year, so we'll just ignore that part. But I did like Swift pre-draft, and I think he can be really good. But it is something that I would want to temper expectations for. And I think that's kind of why Adrian Peterson comes in.
Yep.
And, he gives you, like I was saying with Stafford earlier, I don't want to say it again, but you know what you're going to get with Adrian Peterson, even in year, I don't know what it is, 13, 14. He's going to come in, he's going to run that ball hard, and he's stayed healthy so far. So we'll see what he can do, even in a third on the depth chart role.
Yeah, I think the main thing for AP is going to be backing up Keilan in case of that injury, maybe taking some short yardage reps as well. Just kind of fitting that type of power back role. And being upgraded over both Scarborough last year, who actually was not completely terrible. There's a reason why he's on the 53 when he's not on IR. So that kind of makes sense to me too. And the other thing that I brought up in the Slack chat, in the DLP Slack, is that kind of veteran mentor role, in the sense, and that might have been something that could have gone wrong with the Bears, is like one thing that BQ has done really well is always, well, with the exception of linebacker, always signing those veteran guys to kind of lead the way and be like that culture guy, be like that mentor guy, be like that work ethic type of show you how it's done type of player. I think that's going to be the biggest asset that we get out of AP, is the guy who has that respect from Keilan and Swift, the guy who has proven over several years that he knows how to run the ball. Like, okay, this is a guy that everyone in our room loves. We've all seen what AP can do in his prime. These guys are going to be willing to learn from AP what he did to get to where he is today and why he's a Hall of Fame running back. And kind of take those things and learn from him in practice and kind of hopefully aid that development process along. And he's just going to be there in terms of on the field more as a security blanket type. But the biggest asset for me, I think, is really just going to be what he adds in terms of that culture of leadership and mentor ability to our younger backs. Any thoughts on that from any of you guys?
Yeah, that's a very valid point, and not even just as an injury replacement, which will almost inevitably happen with Keilan, but like you said, a guy in the locker room, it fits like a glove.
Cool. So yeah, we already talked a little bit about Swift's ability to make plays out of the backfield as well. I think he's a little bit better than Theo. I touched on that in the article, a couple of other things. So anyone can start. I guess we'll start with Grayson on this. Do you have any concerns about Swift's ability to, because you actually kind of indirectly mentioned this, do you have any concerns about Swift's ability to translate day one, especially knowing that he started off most of camp injured?
That obviously doesn't help. But I still, I'm looking at Jalen Johnson stepping in as a number 2 corner in Chicago, and he's missed all the training camp. It is just simply, for me, the fact that you just can't predict it 100%.
Okay.
I'd be very happy with a guy like Swift stepping in on whatever team I have. Very happy with a guy like that. But it's it's an issue with every rookie that was drafted this year, from first overall to, Mr. Irrelevant, is you don't know 100% what you're gonna get.
Okay, so it's nothing like in particular that you saw on tape as an issue, like with his skill set that you don't think is it's just gonna be the situation in the world
Yeah.
around us?
He was drafted early second round for a reason. He's a very talented guy, and I believe he can make it work.
Cool.
Yeah. To back that up, I'm not sure how much we're gonna see of him. Week 1.
Oh, we're not gonna see much of anything week 1, I don't think.
Just because with I keep missing most, if not all, of training camp. You don't know what it's gonna look like, how many snaps he's gonna get.
Yeah, week 1 for me is going to be all about Stafford carrying the team and maybe getting Keilan some work in just to run the ball. But yeah, this is going to be week 1. We're going to kind of, I think, stick to our strength, and we're going to try and get the ball into Hawkinson and target. You said Jalen Johnson was Chicago's number 2.
He is, last I saw, supposed to start. So, yep.
Yeah, we'll probably look to attack that weakness and so on and so forth, more than try and get those rookies some reps.
Right.
So
sorry, I was going to add to that. I think week 1 is going to be the sloppiest game of the season for most teams in the NFL.
Well, it always is, but yeah.
But even more so this year with no preseason and with the way the world is around us, it's been a very weird off season.
Right. So Kerryon Johnson is actually really interesting to me. He actually developed a lot more than I thought. I heard quite a bit of negative things in terms of mainstream media surrounding Kerryon. And I was actually pretty surprised when I dug a little bit deeper into some of the numbers behind what he did last year. And a couple of things really stood out to me, other than his pass protection, which is just kind of more of a minor note. His receiving ability was fantastic last year compared to what I remember, only behind Mark Ingram, Christian McCaffrey, and Austin Eckler, according to DVOA. But also, his decision-making last year. Kerryon, when he came out of Auburn, was really known for being this patient style, Le'Veon Bell type of patient, wait for the play to develop type of back. And behind our offensive line, early in his career in year 1, we kind of saw that was leading to some issues in terms of short yardage. Right, he wasn't really attacking those holes. He was missing some. He wasn't really floating through plays, and it kind of led to a bit of a okay type of year from him. And what really kind of stood out to me was his behind the line of scrimmage last year completely flipped under Kyle Kasky from almost 3 seconds behind the line of scrimmage, which is a long time, to only 2.73 seconds, which was only 12th shortest in the league. So what that kind of says to me is I really think that we're starting to see kind of where Kerryon is headed in his development, and that mental processing, that vision, that decision-making ability is really quickening with him under Kyle Kasky. So Sam, we'll start with you on this one. What do you think about the development of Kerryon in terms of his traits, even if we didn't necessarily see the big playability from Johnson last year while he was hurt?
I mean, I've always been rather high on Kerryon outside of his injury issues. That's really the main thing about him I don't like. Besides that, he doesn't have like great top end speed. But I mean, I think he's got elite burst. Like he finds the hole, he can burst through it extremely quick, even though his top speed isn't very elite. He's got good power. He's got underrated elusiveness. And like you said, his development has been spectacular. Like you can see as he goes through the years when he's actually healthy and on the field, he's becoming a better processor and he's hitting holes better. So you like to see that from Kerryon, obviously.
Keilan, your thoughts?
Yeah, he's like Sam said, the main concern for him is the injuries. But when he's actually on the field, he's a really good running back. He's not going to be like a top 5, top 10 guy, although with running backs it seems to change every year. But, he's a above average guy when on the field, and he just keeps improving. Ever since he was in college, he's gotten better every year, and he's turning into a really good running back for us.
Cool. Grayson, what do you have to think about Keilan and what you've seen from him in his time? I don't think he played against Chicago last year, but just your general observations and notes about what you think about Keilan, even going back to Auburn.
Yeah, I'm an Auburn fan, so I did like him a lot coming out. Was hoping he would end up in Chicago. Was bummed he was in Detroit. I don't think he's progressed really like anyone's hoped. He is your number one running back. But I thought he'd be maybe a little bit better. But if he can stay healthy, I think easily you could see that 1,000 yards, a bunch of touchdowns. And I think he's got a little bit more upside in the passing game than he's flashed. And I'd love to see that be more of a part of his game. But we'll just have to see if he can stay on the field.
Yeah, and like I alluded to a little bit earlier, you brought up the passing game side. He was actually pretty effective, obviously very limited last year. But he was actually pretty effective when he actually got his hands on the ball, which I think is going to make things really interesting when you pair with DeAndre Swift, because obviously Swift is really going to be more of that threat to go out in the slot or out wide even and kind of draw those mismatches a little bit more. Keilan has a little bit more of that backfield receiving element to him in terms of swings and wheels and that kind of element and angle and that whole thing. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. Any other general thoughts on the running back room before we head into wide receivers and tight ends? Nope. Okay.
Well, we failed to mention Ty Johnson's name, but you know what? That's probably for good reason.
Yeah, Ty Johnson really struggled last year. He was a rookie. He's probably going to be running back 4 when DeAndre is healthy and gets under him a little bit.
Really
if
unfortunate.
He gets too much work next year.
I was going to say it's really unfortunate that he made the team over Jason Huntley.
Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, but I mean, good for him. I guess he showed out in camp, which is nice to see.
My logic with that is we can love Huntley from a distance view with what he did, but with COVID and Ty Johnson already having a year of experience under Bevell and, in an NFL style season, having Ty Johnson at that point might just be more valuable in case we do see those injuries stack up, where you need someone that you can rely on a little bit more than someone who's completely inexperienced. Because, Ty Johnson's pretty much just going to be an insurance scat back. There's not much more he's going to do.
Yeah.
Cool. So we have about 6.5 minutes left to talk about the wide receivers and tight ends. So Keilan, we'll start with you. Actually, you know what, Grayson, let's start with you on this one. What do you think about the potential for TJ Hawkinson, especially week 1 against Chicago, to kind of attack even versus Minnesota and Green Bay, to kind of attack those linebackers and safeties and around the division? And what do you think about the remaining wide receivers in Kenny, Marv, and Danny?
With focusing on Hawkinson first, the division, we've got a lot of good, safeties, linebackers. Chicago, you've got Roquan Smith hopefully stepping up this year. Eddie Jackson, Adrian Amos in Green Bay, Eric Kendricks. You've got a lot of talented guys who can try to help out on the tight ends. Obviously he was drafted very early for a tight end, should be fantastic. Can do everything you want from that position. Surprised Chicago didn't go for him with one of their fixations on tight ends. I don't know why he wasn't a guy you're going to take. I'm just kidding. But he is very talented, would be, in my opinion, the second best option, just behind Galladay. He's got sky high potential. I'm a big fan. And then going to the other receivers, they might need to step up, week 1 against a team like Chicago where that second corner isn't as strong as, other teams. But I do think there is some to be desired from the wide receiver depth. Outside of Galladay, I'm a big fan of his. But overall, I think it's a good unit.
Cool. Sam?
Are we looking at tight ends here, not
Tight
receivers?
ends and wide receivers. Both.
Okay, both. I can comment on both.
I hope so.
I like Galladay more than you do. Galladay's a stud. I'd like to see him separate more, but he's clearly proven himself to be a top-end wide receiver in the league, and you can rely on him to come down with the football, and you can truly rely on him to be your wide receiver one.
You mean he's not the best separator in the NFL? Who knew?
Hawkinson, boy, he's going to shock the world this year. I'm telling you. That mama, there goes that man. He's going to make plays this year. He's probably going to step up as a blocker, I would imagine. And as a receiver, we kind of know what he's been working with Kittle all offseason. Man's an absolute stud. He's gotten way bigger. Man looks like the Hulk.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just going to improve his blocking strength, his release strength, his ability after the catch, his ability in contested catches, everything. It's going to improve. And then, you get another year of development with a tight end who usually takes a couple years to kind of settle in. I mean, I truly think we can see that George Kittle caliber jump with production and talent from him this year. So I'm ecstatic. And, Marvin Jones is good. I mean, there's not like a whole lot I can say on him. He's a solid number 2 guy. I'm going to rely on him to abuse Xavier Rhodes and the Vikings every year, even though he's no longer there. And Amendola is a great slot guy to have, great veteran leadership guy in the locker room too. That's like one of his main roles, even though he did kind of show out last year for us. And I'm excited to see what they do with Agnew. I'm excited for Agnew. I think he could actually be like a really underrated good piece for our offense. Like a Tariq Cohen style player.
Interesting.
And
A guy like Cordarrelle Patterson and,
Cool. So, Keilan, you have about, I don't know if you see the timer up here in the top, but you have about 2.5 minutes to give your thoughts on the wide receivers and tight end group.
Cool. Well, first thoughts, Hawkinson. He honestly, I think he can be regarded as unanimously regarded as a top 5 tight end at the end of the year, and I think that's what's going to happen. He has the upside to be an elite blocker, an elite pass catcher. Like Sam was saying, he's got the Kittle upside. He's been training with him this offseason. He's been both from Iowa guys. And, I think he's a really talented tight end. And obviously, Galladay's a really good contested catch guy. He's a solid receiver 1. Marvin, solid receiver 2, although I believe both of those guys are due for a contract at the end of the year, so it'll be interesting to see how they both play in their contract years. And Amendola, great leader, pretty good slot receiver. I mean, that's all you can really say.
Cool. Yeah, so there's actually, I would kind of tend to agree with what Grayson initially said. This is probably one of my least favorite position groups on this team. Personally, for me, I'm just not as high on, with the exception of Hawkinson, just focusing on wide receivers. I'm not as high on most of these guys as I think the general media is, and we talked a little bit about this on DLP a couple days ago when they did our live show. I feel like Galladay is kind of that guy who seems like every year, like 1 or 2 lines tends to get a little overhyped. I feel like Galladay is kind of getting to that point now where he's starting to get a little bit overhyped compared to what he actually is. Just because of the volume stats that he puts up, obviously leading the league in tight ends, over 1,000 yards, staying healthy, producing with David Blau, so on and so forth. So he's kind of the one guy I think is getting a little too much of that recognition at this point compared to what he actually really is. And he actually, for those of you guys who, of course, didn't read this one, just a little bit of a brief preview here. Galladay was last in the league in separation, 1.9 yards of separation, despite getting 5.3 yards of cushion last year. So Marvin Jones not really the best separator either. So really just kind of trying to, and that's like why Stafford was so aggressive, especially with those tight window throws, is you really have to kind of do that to maximize those guys' receiving talent. So really just having to really target those guys. And just to go over TJ Hawkinson a little bit myself, obviously really big fan of him, as we discussed on the channel several times now. But definitely like his potential this year. The addition of DeAndre Swift is really, really underrating him. And his impact and what he's going to be able to do paired with DeAndre in the receiving game this particular upcoming season. So, also have Jesse James returning. Just a quick shout out to him as well. Be our number 2 tight end. If something were happening to Hawkinson again, he's going to be the guy that has to step up. And he's kind of that veteran in the room, the guy who's been there, done that with Pittsburgh, with the Steelers. So, yeah. With that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed part 1. This is going to be the offense. We're going to talk about the defense coming up, as well as the Green Bay game and our season predictions in part 2 and 3. I believe we're going to do 3 parts of this. So, with that said, hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Make sure to join us for the upcoming parts, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.